Yeah, I'll just let you know when I get that, and then, or when Will and I get that, and then if everybody's good, we can start.
Yep.
I haven't got it yet.
Yeah, I'm sending it right now. My computer is
okay.
very angry at me today, so it's gonna take a sec.
No worries. Take your time.
Shoot, sorry. It has been forever since we debated the staff case, so we forgot to send the content warning form. So I need to send that in the email chain before I send the case doc in the email chain.
That's fine.
So my bad.
Perfectly.
Sorry. And then as soon as everybody fills out the form, we'll send either the opt-out version or the regular version. Then we're ready to go.
Did you send oh wait, I got it, never mind.
All right, so we got 4 opt-ins. I sent the case doc. We're just going to read the normal version of case because everybody is fine with it. And also, Whitman is switching speaking positions for this round, so I'm going to speak first. Sophia will speak second.
For those of you who knew our previous speaking positions.
I guess so, yeah. Okay. Sorry, give me a second. Okay, here we go. Can I use your font to time view?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then we'll start. Okay. We affirm, first an overview, the war on drugs cannot be won with the U.S.'s current approach. Empirically, U.S. tactics are failing. Wheeler 11 finds that currently the U.S. is the world's largest consumer of drugs. It comprises just 5% of the global population, yet accounts for over 25% of global demand for illicit drugs. Indeed, Porter 12 corroborates that despite billions spent, about 40% of high school seniors admit to having taken some illegal drug in the last year, up to 30% from 2 decades ago. With that in mind, our sole contention is immigration. Ending the war on drugs helps immigrants in 2 ways. Subpoint A is ending persecution. Becker 21 explains that the drug war has provided the primary mechanism for removing immigrants. A conviction for a drug offense can cause extremely serious immigration consequences, making a person deportable, ineligible for citizenship, and ineligible for asylum. Indeed, Becker furthers that for immigration purposes, a drug conviction is perhaps the single most damaging type of conviction after murder. Still further, non-citizens who have been convicted of drug offenses may be subject to mandatory detentions, which require them to be incarcerated in immigrant detention facilities without bond hearings. Both the deportation and detention of immigrants are disastrous. Lenders writes that nearly 4 in 5 families in detention centers have a credible fear of persecution should they be forced to return to the countries from which they migrated. Many of those deported are forced to return to dangerous, turbulent environments. HRW 17 furthers that deportations threaten a range of fundamental human rights, including the right to family unity, the right to seek asylum from persecution, the right to due process, and the rights of children. Indeed, deportation is often fatal. In just one country, Avocado 19 finds that more than 200 people the United States has sent back to El Salvador have been killed or seriously abused. Even before deportation, conditions in detention centers are subhuman. Sober 19 finds that visiting doctors call detention centers torture facilities, with detainees being fed expired food and living in unsafe and unhealthy conditions. Jung 19 corroborates on the horrid conditions, saying adults and children have been held for months in cramped cells with no access to soap, toothpaste, or places to wash their hands or shower. Children sleep on concrete floors, adults have to stand for days due to lack of space, and 900 people were crammed into a space designed to accommodate 125 at most. Indeed, detention centers have even led to forced sterilization. Najera 20 writes that a gynecologist in Georgia performed hysterectomies on migrant women in the custody of ICE without fully informed consent. ICE's mission, rooted in anti-terrorist efforts, is bound to produce inhumane treatment of migrants. Subpoint B is stabilizing immigrant source countries. Aben 19 finds that in just 7 Latin American countries, violence has killed more people than the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen combined as a consequence of the ceaseless exchange of drugs with the United States. More specifically, Mexico and Colombia are being destroyed by violence caused by conflict between drug cartels in the U.S. Chaparro 21 writes that drug-related violence has caused hundreds of thousands of deaths in Mexico over the past 2 decades. Criminal groups drive that violence, but U.S. authorities have helped make some of it possible. Reuters 20 explains that drug trafficking fuels Colombia's decades-long internal conflict, which has killed more than 260,000 and displaced millions. Unfortunately, cartels will never be defeated by force. Even if the U.S.'s aggressive strategy worked and drug dealers and cartels were crushed where they exist now, the global drug problem would only grow. Lopez 16 explains that even if we were actually able to defeat drug cartels, drug production and trafficking, and the violence that comes with both would shift elsewhere because the drug trade is so lucrative, someone always wants to take it up. In fact, the situation would likely worsen. Lopez predicts that these new cartels would develop in countries where the drug trade might be one of the only economic opportunities and governments won't be strong enough to suppress the drug trade. This enables cartels to do vastly more damage. Evaldi 17 explains that in developing countries, cartels may be even more harmful because the higher prices they generate can drastically affect the real income of the poor. Indeed, the U.S. must choke cartel finances through legalization. Block 20 finds that the only way to undermine drug cartels is to legalize addictive substances, all of them with no exception, explaining legalizing drugs will take the legs out from under cartels. They will have no specialization nor comparative advantage in the provision of these products, and with everyone else may legally compete. With one stroke of the legislative pen, cartels will be severely weakened, killings will be radically reduced, and health and safety increased. Thus we affirm.
Okay. So do you want to send the case doc beforehand?
Yeah. I just sent it now. Yeah, just make sure. Yeah, we read cut cards just in like paragraph form, so if you want to see any evidence, we can just send it after, if that's chill with everybody. But yeah, just let us know.
On our end. Hold on, Sophia went to grab water. So if you just want to wait a second.
Okay.
Sophia's here. We're all good.
Okay, sounds good. Is anyone not ready? All right. In that case, I'll begin. We negate contention when it's global chaos. Subpoint its treaties. Bloomfield 18 observes the U.S. stands as the primary mover for drug conventions, enactment of prohibitionist policies. Humphreys 13 explains that even among nations with sympathy towards marijuana, the price of changing UN treaties is legalizing all drugs. Nations would vigorously oppose the action. Bloomfield furthers that if a nation believes the U.S. will shirk its treaty obligations, then the credibility of the U.S. will diminish commensurately. Especially in the case of drug treaties, this could ripple out across the globe and could hamstring diplomatic missions far greater than drug policy. Sir 18 writes that multinational diplomatic agreements contribute to the peaceful international system would have been impossible without U.S. support and adherence. U.S. rejection encourages unilateralism by other powerful actors. Dow 15 concludes that the next great power will involve nuclear weapons. It would end civilization through miscalculation. Subpoint B is political capital. Build Back Better's climate provisions will pass. Pamuk wrote last week that Democrats, including Manchin, have indicated that they would revive the proposal and keep provisions that curb climate change, but scale back pieces that Manchin opposes. Affirming destroys its cooperation. Uesberg 21 explains that legalization is considered unpalatable by many Republicans and Democratic politicians. Thus, Roberts 21 concludes that federal decriminalization would spend limited political capital. Political capital is key to getting BBB through. Nichols 21 writes that to get BBB into law, Biden wants to save political capital for moderates for that fight. Putting Triple B into law is key for climate efforts globally. Plumber 21 explains that if the bill passes, the U.S. would cut emissions in half by 2030, bolstering global efforts to save off a drastic rise in temperatures. If the bill dies, it would prove impossible to meet those targets. Taylor 19 quantifies that air pollution will kill 150 million people for every degree of warming. Cuomo 11 laments that disasters intensify social and political inequities within the most vulnerable females and people of color and children due to climate change. Contention 2 is a hash crash. Federal legalization will turn the marijuana industry into a bubble and poppy. Copeland 13 explains that the most important factor protecting the marijuana industry from bubble status is federal prohibition, which allows the industry to grow at a reasonable pace, as large federal institutions will hesitate to support investors in a federally prohibited industry. Once this becomes a federal issue and large-scale investors get involved, all bets are off. Copeland concludes that the result will be an economic bust similar to the dot-com or housing market. This would be devastating, as in 08 alone, Boston University quantifies that 100 million people across the world fell into extreme poverty. Contention 3 is big pharma. Innovation is high. Lynchpin 21 writes that the outlook is positive for 2022. Thousands of compounds are currently in the latter stages of development. This level of production has not occurred for a decade. There's increased focus on value. Unfortunately, legalization reverses progress. Physiker 94 writes that companies spend money and time on recreational drug research. They would spend less time and money on but less potentially lucrative research, such as cures for AIDS and cancer. They would cut the riskiest, least lucrative areas of research budgets to move money to recreational drugs. Pharma innovation is key. Hansman 15 writes that with the right investments, we could avert 10 million deaths every single year by 2035. Now as crucial as 409 confirms that the globalization mass markets means that a micro could decimate populations without big pharma. All the science in the world won't help us fight the next pandemic, since the U.S. accounts for 50% of the industry. Dillian 17 concludes that pandemics are an existential threat on par with climate change and nuclear conflict. Besides crushing innovation, Forum 09 finds that once drugs are legal, then sellers can hire lobbyists to reduce regulation. Empirically, Lopez 18 writes that regulators controlled by industries was the key cause for the opioid epidemic. Lopez concludes that while experts have ideas to combat misuse and deaths, lawmakers fail to do anything. These companies aggressively lobby them not to. Contention force exports. Legalization turns the U.S. into a hub for illegal drug exporters. Murray 19 writes that the legal market provides criminals with the suppression of law enforcement, protected by operating within the market of legitimate safe production. They find greatly expanded international smuggling opportunities. This allows trafficking groups to operate like corporations. Calkins 11 laments that legalization would cut costs of cocaine and heroin. Legal distributors were able to ship them by main style used to transport other legal goods. Those rates are less than 1% of current costs. Empirically, DW 17 confirms the legalization of drug use in the Netherlands led to a paradise of exported ecstasy, meth, cocaine, and heroin. However, Martin 20 specifies that if the U.S. legalized all drugs, cartels would increase their supply distribution to African markets where the prices remain high through facilitating violent crackdowns and financing armed groups. Apollo also warns that drug trafficking has emerged as a formidable threat and not limited to the postured children of civil unrest like Guinea-Bissau, Somalia, or Liberia. Even in stable states, drugs might emerge as a new source of conflict. Arresting finds that this could kill millions. Conflict leads to refugee flows and decimated infrastructure, destroying governments. That's why Goldstein warns that war is the root cause of structural injustices.
Okay, are we ready for cross?
Yeah, you have first question.
Wait, actually, let me take 1 second. Starting now. Okay, that was 15 seconds.
Okay. First question is all yours.
Okay, let me pull up my timer. Okay, let's talk about treaties. So your, I think it's Surrey 18 evidence makes basically the assertion that treaties have, kept the globe safe. So can you give me an example of why treaties are good? Or like how
treaties are good
safe?
because they increase cooperation among countries and prevent conflict between those
Sure.
countries.
What major conflicts have been prevented by a treaty, like would-be conflicts?
I mean, like, number one, I wouldn't know because those conflicts never occurred in the first place.
But the treaties are public, right?
But
So we
second
can
off, we
probably
would just say that a
speculate.
lot of interstate conflicts and a lot of like all of our impacts, such as this great power war, have been prevented from those treaties because
Wait,
right now,
how so though? Because we have had conflict. We have had
that, yeah. So
we have had tons of major conflicts, as well as like colonialism and imperialism perpetrated by the treaties themselves, which caused even more conflict. So I'm just wondering why treaties are good. There's not a clear warrant.
The last biggest conflict that occurred that killed like millions and millions and millions of people to such a large scale was World War II. The link that we say is the U.S. can check back against these bad actors through those treaties. But if those treaties
is just an abject falsehood that millions of people haven't died in a conflict or humanitarian disaster caused by a conflict since World War II. That's not true.
Next great power war, which we say has specifically been prevented from those treaties.
Sure, but there's no distinction other than the name, power war, and conflict. A conflict can be just as deadly as a power war, even if you have less powers. If those powers are more deadly,
with like big powers such as China and Russia. But again, we've been on this.
No intrinsic difference between China and Russia and other actors, other than that you're naming more of them. But that's fine. You can take
We've been on this for like 150. Okay.
Sure.
So let's talk about your overview, right? The warrant you give for why the war on drugs is unwinnable is a ton of high school seniors have taken drugs. Why is that a warrant for why the war on drugs is currently unwinnable?
Means that it basically is ineffective no matter how much the US government has poured money into like criminalizing drug use.
Yeah, wait, but why does
usage is trending up?
Why does a bunch of teens taking drugs mean that our like international war on drugs is specifically?
It means that usage is trending up. Whether or not they're teens is like a distinction that doesn't really matter.
And the U.S.'s war on drugs against those international cartels.
Wait, but the US's supply of drugs comes mostly from international cartels.
So these high school seniors are getting their drugs from like Colombian cartels.
Wait, can you just let me finish?
Yeah.
Okay. So if US usage is increasing, that means that obviously the cartels haven't been stopped because there's still enough supply coming into the United States from cartels for usage to be increasing. That's the end of cross.
Okay, we'll send the doc in just a second.
Do you need prep to get her set up?
No, probably not. No.
Okay. Or actually, we will take a second to prep. Doc is, oh wait, no, it's making me share it. Okay. Doc is sent. Yeah.
Sorry, how much prep do y'all use?
We used 50 seconds.
Okay. So we just sent the doc. I'd say it is definitely critical to have it open. Not because it'll be fast, but
you should have it open.
You'll see.
One long case turn down the neg, and we will both be speaking for portions of the speech.
Wait 1 sec. Let me just get an extra sheet of paper.
Yes. Should I flow this on the
You can
neg
flow it
or?
on
I would
case
flow it
or-
on your case. We're gonna flow it on your case, but if you want to flow it on a separate sheet of paper, whatever you want.
Okay, so I should flow it on the neg.
Yeah.
All right. Is everyone ready? Good to hear. Catherine, you good?
I'm good.
We reject their advocacy that international law is a useful or important forum to make change. The jargon and speed of native speakers are used to oppress others that speak in international conferences and institutions. Suda 08. Il y a un grand écart de la connaissance de l'anglais entre les locuteurs indigènes et les locuteurs non indigènes, particulièrement les locuteurs dont la langue maternelle est loin de l'anglais. Native speakers of English try to push non-native speakers out of discussions by making use of tactics that stem from characteristics unique only in English. They step up the speed of speech, use jargon, or make utterances that are grammatically complex. Les locuteurs indigènes de l'anglais dans les conférences dominées par l'anglais utilisent leur avantage linguistique pour amplifier leur pouvoir afin qu'ils puissent établir une relation inégale avec les non-anglophones.
En comunicación dominado por inglés, los americanos siempre tienen control sobre la semántico bajo el cual los sutil matices de los demás son ignorados o pasados por alto. Los angloparlantes están en una posición para controlar la comunicación para su propia ventaja.
Het promoten van internationale structuren is taalimperialisme. Their implicit assumption that English-dominated systems are neutral and should be upheld creates an in-round simulation for violence and imperialism. Choi 03.
在他们倡导的系统中，应有技术承担权利和声望，职位的说明人，就复制了以前的殖民情况，当地人应掌握殖民的也有的获得权利。
Cet aspect politique de l'inégalité est bien masqué par le discours répandu de l'anglais est un outil impartial de communication internationale. The engineering of a favorable discourse is an authoritarian allocation of values that projects images of an ideal society. The universal assumption of the dominance of English causes non-natives to over-identify with English and adopt oppressive principles, resulting in neo-colonial destruction of the self. Suda 08. La conséquence ultime de la domination de l'anglais est que le colonisé est contrôlé mentalement par le colonisateur. Le domaine de domination le plus important du colonisme est l'univers mental du colonisé, le contrôle par la culture de la façon dont les gens se perçoivent et de leur rapport au monde.
Dominación lingüística guía al control mental. La dominación global de inglés hoy lleva al control mental de la población global por angloparlantes, sus naciones y sus gobiernos. El control mental se hace posible por una combinación de destrucción y deliberada infravaloración de una cultura y la elevación del lenguaje del colonizador. 被殖民就或被支配就通常被迫服从心理控制的力量，被支配就被引导认同支配就并赞美支配者的语。
The alternative is to embrace an ecology of languages. Phillipson 18.
Las maneras en que se privilegia el inglés y el discurso que lo justifica necesitan escrutinio crítico. Es necesario fortalecer la diversidad lingüística para contrarrestar el imperialismo lingüístico.
Suda 08. L'hégémonie de l'anglais crée et reproduit l'inégalité, la discrimination et la colonisation de la tête. La langue est une culture et une source d'identité personnelle. Inequality among languages means inequality among people. The death of one language is the death of its speakers. The role of the ballot is to vote for whatever team better challenges the hegemony of English. Het onderzoeken waar de overkoepelende structuren van het Engels is een voorwaarde om Engels te spoken benredt en perspectief dat onderdrukken voorkomt. Suda 08. The use of English is very much taken for granted in international communication today. The use of English should not be taken for granted. It should be examined as a problem of linguistic hegemony.
La dominancia de inglés hoy causa no solo lingüística y comunicativa desigualdad, sino también los sentimientos de ansiedad y inseguridad, especialmente por parte de los no angloparlantes en un mundo globalizando rápidamente en el cual inglés domina ampliamente. 这些语言把传问题对于人类和文化安全的发展至关重要。
That's reaffirmed.
Yeah.
All right. We'll take prep. Okay. Yeah. We'll take prep starting now.
We used 58 seconds.
It's gonna be the case turn, just like line by lining it, then like roll the ballot, and then their case. Okay. Is everybody good? Okay. Let's begin now. Let's go to the case turn, or like whatever this K they read with the alt. So first off, we say the biggest thing is they've never read a warrant as to why international law leads to more U.S. imperialism or this U.S. pressure on languages. We'd give you 2 warrants as to why the multilateralism we advocate in case is good. Before that, I want to make it clear to the judges that in our case, we specifically outlined that multilateral diplomatic commitments with the U.S. prevent unilateralism, meaning we have completely outlined how we prevent all of their bad impacts. First of all, we tell U.S. multilateralism literally has ambassadors for translation, etc., and does negotiations between countries, meaning if anything, advocating for our side with multilateralism and U.S. international law is way net better. Secondly, our evidence specifically indicates, and our argument is that multilateralism is to prevent unilateralism. This is on net better because look at the comparison. Without diplomatic law, without international law, authoritarian governments can take over and become unilateral, which is infinitely worse because they crack down more, do worse things. Look to China, which is very authoritarian, and they put Uyghurs in concentration camps. We'd say they've never given you an analysis specifically as to why U.S. multilateralism or international law is on net worse than all of these other alternatives because you never outlined that we're advocating for U.S. unilateralism. It's specifically preventing this. Lastly, they really have no way to prove any abuse whatsoever. We've never read any of these arguments forcing English on non-native speakers or on English speakers. Both me and William are families of immigrants that do speak different languages. There is no real violation here. Doesn't make any sense. Let's go to their roll of the ballot. There is no warrant as to how voting for them has any impact outside of the debate space. They don't read a norm-setting warrant. They don't read anything how it leads on net decreased oppression. Do not let them read this in first summary because as of right now, they've established no pre-fiat offense as to why voting for them does anything, meaning you physically cannot vote on this. With that said, the counter roll of the ballot is vote for the better debater and the team that on net decreases oppression more like things like structural violence. We say it's much better to look from our side that's actively focusing on a policy lens because our Nixon evidence indicates that when you focus on the policy topical debate like we are instead of reading this massive case turn about a K, it allows teams to do research and learn literature, which is on that better because they can do things like activism, which is implicated and led to policy briefs, which A means that the out of round debate space is better, and B means that there's also things like better voting patterns, etc., which solves for their arguments. Once again, they've completely rejected the post-fiat debate and have read a roll of the ballot without any impact whatsoever as to how it stops the debate community or anything outside of it at all, so there's no way you can vote on this whatsoever. With that said, let's go to their case proper. On the overview, Fed Conrad writes that drug use has declined in America for the last 40 years, and the NIH last year writes that the youth drug abuse is at an all-time low, posting both of their evidence. They don't read any warrant as to why it's unwinnable. On persecution, one, the status quo solves as Miroff 21 writes that immigrant arrests in the United States fell to lowest levels in more than a decade after Biden took office. Secondly, use will still be illegal for immigrants, as Chang 19 confirms that a foreign national who engages in use after federal legalization may still be barred under the ground of inadmissibility. Thirdly, there's no link because Cooper 25 said in every state that is legalized, being caught with large amounts or selling it and using it in a school zone has been illegal, which is why Dixon 19 reports were in states that legalized drugs, there is an increase in arrest, meaning there's more for propensity for them to be deported. Fourthly, you can turn it because affirming increased arrests as staff 20 finds that tax revenue from legalization funds the police, as 20% of tax revenue legalization would create was earmarked for police groups that had spent decades trying to arrest citizens. On stabilizing source countries, one, Moga 20 writes that cartels are collapsing now due to U.S. efforts into coronavirus, post-dating them. Technically, you can turn it as Brown 21 finds that legalization will allow criminals to operate in a newly legal economy with the same violent practices as they practice in the illegal space, empirically proven by them setting up shop in California, according to Stimson. Then you can turn it because affirming increases cartel violence, because YOS 12 explains that those previously engaged in drug trafficking won't be easily absorbed into legal jobs. This may increase criminal activities that hurt citizens more directly, which is why in Portugal, when they decriminalized Frank, 20 reports murders increased by 41%. Also, their Lopez evidence takes out any solvency because taking away one market in the U.S. means they can just sell somewhere else, which also turns their argument because taking away the U.S. market means they can only diversify more, which turns all of their offense on source countries. There's really no impact to the roll of the ballot or any pre-fiat weighing done. It's pretty easy to vote for us.
You're cross. Okay, you get the cross.
Yeah.
How do you define unilateralism?
Like, we would say it's when like one country like takes over or dominates or anything like that. We just say it's opposite of what's happening now.
Wait, what does that mean? What
So
country takes over and dominates?
Well, for example, our evidence and our argument isolates that if we don't have these diplomatic agreements that enforce multilateralism, authoritarian
So-
governments can
So
go
what
up and
you're
take the
saying
world
is that
stage.
it's bad if a single country, quote unquote, takes over and dominates international
Well,
relations.
That's your no. What we're saying is no. We're not saying okay. So like yeah. Our argument is that multilateralism is always comparatively better than the other option, right? Even though you're going to get up here and make the argument that there's some semblance of unilateralism now from US imperialism, you've never given any comparative analysis as to why the other side is better. We're
I'm
saying
not
when you create,
making that argument. I'm asking you to define what unilateralism actually is, because saying a country dominating and
Yeah,
then claiming
we
that a
just say that,
country
like,
is
a
dominating
country
right now makes
that
absolutely zero
like
sense.
dominates the political space, etc., like controls multiple countries, or
So
what
the
we'd
United
say.
States in the
No,
status
but
quo
here's
is
our
a unilateral actor.
No, our analysis is much different. We say that even if there's a semblance of unilateralism now, it's happening through diplomatic, multilateral
So
treaties,
what
which
is the
always,
distinction? What is the distinction between unilateralism through multilateral
Yeah.
treaties and straight unilateralism?
because they're bounded to treaties right now. We have diplomatic agreements that restrict our like purview of what we can do. But compared to when you affirm, when you break these treaties, any other country can come in, violate all of these because it's not
Sure,
built up
that's
anymore,
fine.
and go against diplomatic agreements.
That's fine. You can take a question.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the impact to your roll of the ballot or to your K at all? Like what happens when we vote AF?
It's pretty simple. When you vote AF, you're voting to uphold a system that systematically excludes everybody who doesn't have a proficiency in English in
Wait,
the
but
statute.
you're AF.
When you
Yeah,
vote,
I'm just asking. So like, what happens? Yeah, that was just semantic. That's fine. Just like what happens outside of the debate round? Like what happens when we vote for you?
first of all, what happens outside of the debate round doesn't matter. You can still win an argument within the debate round. It's a methods debate about the debate round. Like, I don't need norm setting to win a theory shell.
Well, what I'm explaining is you just say that you're rejecting it, like we should just reject it, but you've never given any analysis as to what the impact is. So what I'm saying
So
is
we're
on
saying-
our side is better
Yeah,
because like leads to
I can explain.
activism,
What's
etc.
happening? We're saying what's happening right now is bad. And when you reject what's happening right now, you are siding with something better.
But my analysis is you never implicate how that actually helps people. Like, sure, rejecting it might be fine, but our analysis, yeah,
You
our
want to be on
analysis,
the right side of the thought experiment, right? You
yeah.
don't make any analysis as to why rejecting you affects the real world in a negative way. So there's no offense for you there either.
Well, no, it was supposed to say you have no offense, and I gave independent analysis as to why looking at a post-fiat layer from what our counter ruled about is on net better.
Sure, but we still win on the post-fiat level because our argument is a straight turn of yours. But
it's a K that doesn't engage with like the actual topic.
No, it does, but we'll get into that in speech.
We'll take prep. Can you run it?
Yeah.
Starting now.
Okay. Do you need extensions?
Yeah, if you can just type them while speaking. I'll extend at the bottom. Okay. Where are you typing them though?
Just right on English translation on the doc.
Cool. Yeah, so it's just gonna be quickly on our case, I guess, on the AF case, and then just straight down the neck. Okay. On the AF case, group every single turn. I didn't catch an impact extended off of any of them. None of these are voters for you in the round. Nobody's garnering offense off of our AF case. We're kicking it. Go to the next. there's a lot of problems with the way that they respond to the case turn. Let's start at the top. First, they say there's no warrant as to why the U.S. system is exclusive. First, the pseudo evidence is very explicit. It says that in international conferences, there is a huge gap between the knowledge of English for native and non-native speakers, which means that anyone who, oh wait, did we? Okay. Anyone who's a not native speaker.
I cut out for a sec there. Could you just like start over and get on their side?
Yeah. Do you want to just start over?
Yeah, whatever works.
Okay, that sounds good. We can just, we'll take a second more prep. Okay. I'm just going to start over. Okay. Start on the AF group, all of the turns that they extend, they don't extend an impact off of any one of the turns, nor do they weigh any of the turns against the AF or against the K. We're kicking the AF, so nobody's getting offense off of this sheet at all. You can just throw it out. Go to the next. Lots of problems with how they engage with the K or the case turn, whatever you want to call it, but let's start at the top. First, they say there's no warrant as to why the U.S. is actually exclusive. First, the pseudo evidence is incredibly clear. It says that in international conferences, there's a huge gap between the knowledge of English between English and native and non-native English speakers, which means that anyone who's not a native English speaker is basically pushed out of being able to engage in the conference. That means that people who are not from English-speaking countries inherently aren't able to make policy for themselves in these conferences, and these conferences only further the interests of countries like the U.S. and other English-speaking countries. That is our link. They don't interact with that at all. Then they say that they prevent unilateralism and authoritarianism. Two responses. First, it's a false binary. We say that we're not saying to collapse the international law system. Instead, just decenter English hegemony and make the international law system better, so we can still prevent we can still prevent unilateralism without like centering English hegemony. Secondly, the SQO disproves this. They themselves read you examples of countries that are authoritarian right now under this system that they say is really good at preventing authoritarianism. Obviously, that means it doesn't work. Then they say there's no abuse because they're not forcing people to speak English. Not the link. The link to the K is that they uncritically support these systems of international law that center English and like English hegemony. So they themselves are not holding anyone over the coals saying you must speak English or we'll exclude you, but the international law system is, and they support it unequivocally. Go to the stuff on the roll of the ballot. They say that first, we don't explain why voting for us is good. Let's go very clearly on this. The pseudo-OH evidence that we extend is very clear. It says that the hegemony of English in international law reproduces inequality, discrimination, and colonization. Then the pseudo-evidence at the very end that we read on our roll of the ballot says that English as a lingua franca is taken for granted and should not be taken for granted and instead examined. We are doing the examining right now. The act of speaking in multiple languages, the act of reading the K, does the examining. We are doing the alt, and even if it just makes us all in this round question our own mindset, that's enough offense. Then they say that it's better to do topical debate. First, we did read a topical position in constructive. Second, this is topical. It's criticizing how they themselves interact with the topic and criticizing one of these structures. It's no different than an impact turn. It's just a little bit longer. Then we say that even if you don't buy that our roll of the ballot like is the first thing in the question, the case still turns case because it's a prior question. It's criticizing directly their methods, which means that you need to evaluate the K before you can evaluate the rest of the round. Finally, let's just extend the K. It's very simple. Suda says that there's a huge gap in the knowledge of English between native and non-native speakers, which pushes out anyone who's not a native speaker from being able to participate in international conferences. That's why Choi finds that in the systems that they endorse, English functions as a gatekeeper to positions of power and prestige. Suda says that the way to fix this, or the alternative, is to challenge the hegemony of English that reproduces discrimination and colonization by questioning it and not taking it for granted anymore. We very clearly do that. There's no actual engagement on the K. Easy AF ballot.
Okay. We're gonna take some prep.
Okay, yeah.
Sully, make sure to unmute on our call. Okay. We're gonna start prep. Yeah, Sully, make sure you unmute on Discord. We're gonna start prep now. Okay. We only have like 10 seconds left.
Yeah, you're muted, by the way.
Hello?
Well, you're muted. I just said you're muted in this call.
Oh, okay. I see. I'm muted in Discord, right, Sully?
Yeah. Just
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, order's just gonna be like on the big case turn.
Well, you're muted in the normal call. Like you're muted in NSDA campus.
Tell him I'm gonna
We
Wait,
can
Will,
hear
Will.
him.
Yeah, we can hear
Wait, you can
Will.
hear him? Oh, it says he's muted for me. Okay.
Oh,
This
Yeah,
Will,
it
keep
says
talking,
he's muted
keep
for me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait.
Either way, we can hear him.
I mean, yeah, as
Yeah,
long
you're good,
as y'all can hear me, that's good. Okay, yeah.
Wait, I thought he was coming through your headset solely, and like I could hear him super clearly for some reason.
Sorry, wait, so y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sounds good. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it says my dock is trying to connect, so maybe my Wi-Fi is bad. Just let me know if I cut out. Yeah, anyways. Order of my speech is gonna be just like the big case turn, counter roll the ballot, and then just quickly extending one of our contentions at the very, very end. Okay. Is everyone ready? Okay. In that case, let's start the time now. Let's start on their case turn. This argument is very simple. We tell you that they literally give you no reasoning or warranting as to why these international laws create these problems that they talk about. Remember, we would say that the international law gives you the only risk of solvency, because only with this international law does it allow for increased cooperation among these countries in the spread of new ideas and cultures. If we have a big unilateral system in the world, it creates it destroys any risk of any of this like cooperation or spread of this linguistics that they talk about from happening. So prefer us on risk of offense. But they fully conceded our argument about ambassadors. We say that the form of debate, like the world that we're advocating for, is very, very good because it allows for multilateral hegemony, and that's really good because they fully conceded that these ambassadors from the United States and other countries specifically have translators to come over all of these like linguistic like English barriers that they talk about. This fully goes conceded. It's terminal defense to their entire case. Insofar as they conceded that translators exist, it comes directly delinks their argument about how there's this big huge gap on English knowledge. Second, our argument, second, their solvency is to decentralize the system. Here's another big problem with their K. They literally give you no warranting as to how they do this with this one judge vote in this one specific round robin. They do no argument on like norm setting. They do no argument about out of round like debate scope. You literally have no idea on how this one ballot for my opponents specifically decentralizes the entire system of this English linguistic hedge. They have no solvency. There's no offense to vote off of for this K whatsoever. Second of all, they literally cannot prove to you like a single case where we like spread or use all this jargon against international debaters. The only reason why we're like talking fast and using this jargon is because this is a round robin. My opponents are not international debaters. They don't give you a single like evidence or proof that we do this against international debaters. So insofar as that is true, they have no proof that we are perpetuating the system, this problematic system that they're talking about. Now, extend our rule about it. The argument is very simple. We say that the judge should simply just vote for the better debater and decide that best minimizes real-world oppression in areas like structural violence. They've conceded that topical debate directly comes first because debaters use topical education to go out and do activism. So when the judges and our opponents and us do more research through the lens of the policy, we can go out and support these politicians that are and like vote for these and advocate for policies that creates real world change. Prefer our counter rule about it because my opponents just say deconstruct the system and reject the problem. That doesn't create any real world change. The only way to do that is to go out with real world activism and support politicians who are operating under the scope. At that point, they say their K is topical. This K isn't topical, and it's like creating less topic like debate overall. At that point, extend the last argument: exports legalization will create a legal industry enabling drug organizations to mass produce and ship drugs at 1% of current cost. This directly funds armed groups globally, becoming a source of civil conflict, which kills millions, spreads infectious diseases from refugee flows. That's why Goldstein finds that worse the root cause of structural injustices. We link it to the little ballot. We're the only one that creates real world change. They have no solvency. They have no offense. So for these reasons, please negate.
Sorry, what was your counter roll of the ballot? Could you just repeat it?
Vote for the better debater and decide that best minimizes real world oppression in areas like structural violence.
Oh, okay. Can we do cross?
Yeah.
Just gonna like everyone could hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got that.
What does vote for the better debater mean?
Vote for the team that you think like is winning the argument or doing better in the round. Like what we're I'll give the
So if you lose
no
the
yeah
case off the turn, then you
No.
lose the round.
Yeah.
So we're not
no, the
disagreeing.
second part is what we're going for is that you should vote for the team that on net best minimizes oppression for structural violence for groups like that have been affected by
And
structural
the
violence.
specific
Yeah.
implication that we make, it
Yeah.
has to be a post-fiat argument directly related to the resolution.
Why?
Oh yeah, I can explain. So when we debate topical arguments under the resolution, you increases in-depth research about these policies, and that creates real-world activism, because then once we realize how bad this policy can be for refugees across the world, then I can go out and the judges and anyone else in the round can go out and do activism and support these politicians who are anti-legalization.
Question.
And by doing so, it creates an out-of-world impact that that helps these refugees by preventing these like collapsing of the governments.
Okay.
That's way better than like rejecting everything and deconstructing, because that's a black and white solution.
Question.
Mhm.
Do you think we didn't research the K? Like, I'm not sure.
No, so
what the
here's
difference-
our analysis that William makes. Even though you might have, presented a topical argument that's related to the resolution in case, the fact that you're debating the entire round off the K that's completely divorced from the topic is why you're not.
But how did that
perpetuating
stop us
first-grade
from doing
education.
research?
Yeah.
Like
No,
if
so
we still did
what
the
we're
research,
saying
we still
is-
access the activism.
No, what we're saying is if you just keep reading this on teams or other teams read this, etc., that takes away from post-fiat education because people will just, be reading and responding to non-topical Ks. So in a
I'm
world
not
where
sure
it's
how
how is
I got
this?
I'm not sure how you access post-fiat education by spreading a link extension in the last 10 seconds of
No.
speech after spending the entirety of
yeah,
the speech.
because
Well, that's because
we've
y'all
already
chose to be
established that we're debating
non-topical.
topical. Like
Y'all
but
made the
I
debate
could get a-
non-topical
like-
by reading the K.
it's also just like
That's just like that doesn't matter. I could get up in final and be like, I am debating topical,
But-
and then debate the entire
No.
K. It doesn't matter what we establish.
not-
It
no,
matters
but-
what we do.
the analysis is you're not though because you're reading the K
Yeah,
and
the K
going
itself
for
is
the
But
K.
you guys, the only difference between us and you is that you spend 250 of summary on the K, and we
No,
spend 3 minutes of it.
That's
on
because you've made the
Actually,
round
we
centered
spent
around the K.
252 because we kicked the turns on the app.
Really,
Dude, that's an argument.
That's-
Because
yeah.
you're reading the K, it directly skews the entire
Exactly.
debate out of the policy education.
Okay, wait.
We have to
Reading that
spend-
resolution. It's
Okay.
fine if you read it in case, but if you drop it afterwards.
So
Just to make it clear, the
What
reason
what
why
if you so what if you read a topical argument and then you had like a serious in-round abuse? There's no recourse,
Right.
what
Like
wait what do you mean? Like, yeah, if there was like a
responding-
really
you're
if there was
allowed
a
to
really
read.
bad recourse, sure, but just centering the round
Well,
against this idea
those
that you
two
read
things
the
can't be true
argument.
at once, because
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
get to
There's no bright line between what's a really serious abuse and what
I mean,
you
we
don't
just
get
say in this
serious.
round our advocacy helps marginalized communities more, but that's fine.
You don't extend your advocacy.
Okay, that's fine.
Sophie, do you
My
want
phone
to go?
died. Can I have your
Yeah.
phone? No, I think we're good.
Wait, can we take just 1 second?
For sure.
Okay, run 1 second.
Okay, framing debate K. Or case turn. Important semantical difference, I think. Is everyone ready? Sounds fantastic. Start on their roll at the ballot. 1, they have fundamentally conceded that our K is a prior question because it is questioning the methods in which they engage in topical debate. You can't have bad topical debate and expect it to create the education they talk about. 2, we literally link into this educational warrant because 1, we read a topical position. 2, this is a case turn, which means that we had to research the topic and their case in order to get to this point. And 3, it is fundamentally a question of the methods in which they are engaging in topical debate, which means the education that comes out of this is fundamentally a prior question. It is very easy that we link in, vote for us right there. With that in mind, move to the K, extend it. It's pretty simple. Suda tells you that right now there's a big gap in between the knowledge of English between native speakers and non-native speakers. What this means per the Choi evidence is that English speakers in the discussion of international relations specifically and international law are able to control the semantics and nuance of the discussion and force it to go their way. That's why we see powers like the United States having as much power as they do and pushing these other countries' interests simply out of the water. Choi confirms this empirically. It gatekeeps positions of power. Then our solvency is simple. Phillipson tells you that what you have to do is you have to critically examine the hegemony of English in order to begin deconstructing it. We obviously do that by reading the K. They contested, they don't do it. Suda tells you as well, you have to reject the AF as an act of linguistic imperialism to decenter English. They read 4 responses. 1, they tell you that there is no reason as to why English discussions do this. This is frontlined by our link extension. Suda tells you that there's a big gap in knowledge that allows the United States and other powers to control the semantics. It will never be equitable. 2, they tell you that we have, they talk about ambassadors and say that that solves. However, remember, per the Suda evidence, ambassadors cannot translate these specific nuances and semantics of English, which means that it is never equitable unless we start over and reconstruct the system. 3, they tell you we extend no outside implication as to why our offense matters. This doesn't matter. We don't need to win norm setting in order to win a theory show. We do not need to win that it affects anything outside of the round for you to still vote for what matters in this round. And then they read the roll of the ballot stuff. We already covered it. It is a very, very simple neg ballot. Oh yeah, they try to read something about them not linking in because they're talking in jargon because of US speakers. That's not our argument. Don't vote for it.
Okay, we only have like 10-ish seconds.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Well, I'm good.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, it's gonna be counter roll of the ballot. Then they're okay, and just quickly substance stuff like at the end. Okay, so everybody good? All right, let's begin now. Let's extend the counter roll of the ballot. Vote for the better debater and the side that best minimizes real-world oppression and areas like structural violence. They have conceded that topical debate comes first because debaters use topical education and research to do out-of-round activism policy briefs, to do out-of-round action to help these oppressed groups, outweighing on scope. They say it's a priori. No, William directly responds to this. We say our method is on net better because we're directly critiquing theirs, saying that not focusing on topical education is net worse for the groups that they're trying to help. So ours is, so you prefer our counter roll of ballot because it directly outweighs theirs and proves why you shouldn't vote for them on this a priori argument. Then they say that they also research, but William also responds to this, saying they just heard us mention international law and read a K rebuttal. This has vastly time skewed us away from engaging on topical literature because now they kicked their case, kicked all the case arguments. So we have to focus on this, semantical nuance between if translators can like define the different nuances in international language, vastly takes away from topical education. At the top, we've already right now determined that our counter to roll about is better, more inclusive of these oppressed groups, and is on net better, outweighs theirs. Let's go to their K. The terminal defense is so good. Our evidence says, our arguments that ambassadors and translators in these multilateral diplomatic areas can translate the language, which solves for all of their offense. So there's nothing to vote on. They give you a new response that says it can't go through these nuances. 1, it's completely new in final focus that they can't translate nuances, but B, how else do you translate and interact between 2 languages without translators? There's no alternative here whatsoever. The only way you can is with translators, people who know the language. This makes no sense. That's why they've conceded the risk of offense analysis, that if there's no collaboration or some decentralized collaboration, it's infinitely harder to change linguistic skills and culture, which is why our world is on that better. Look to the UN. They've passed a bunch of laws and a bunch of legislation that help specific marginalized countries. It's just holistically false. Our world is always on that better. With this last 10 seconds, just extend exports. We tell you legalization to create a legal industry enabling drug organizations to mass produce and ship drugs at 1% of the current cost. Drug trafficking fuels armed groups globally, becoming a source of civil conflict that kills millions. It's really easy to vote for us.
Good round, Whitman.
Great round.
Good round.
Good round. If y'all aren't gonna, I know y'all can't disclose, so is it chill if we just dip right now? Is that good with everybody? All right. Thank y'all for judging.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Was really awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, Chad.
I swear, I'm cursed. I haven't seen a PF round in a long time. It's just been judging a lot of round robin, so it's been a lot of more experimental stuff.
I thought this was cool. Okay, this was better, well done. I'm glad that this was well done. Most of the time, it's just people being like securitization or whatever, and then saying buzzwords. But this was actually cool.
Yeah, normally after K rounds, I'm just in a bad mood and it was so annoying and weird. This was this was dope. I liked this a lot. I enjoyed that. It felt thoughtful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Wait, I should have asked. Do you know who's the first speaker on both teams?
It was It was Catherine first for Whitman and William first for Brentwood, I think.
Okay. I'm actually going to use the bathroom real quick, but I'll hit you with my decision on Facebook.
Yeah. I was gonna say, do we need to stay in the room before we?
Oh no. I think we just don't disclose. Like we just submit the ballot.
Yeah, we can DM about it later.
All right. See ya.
Yeah, so.